The golden flame was one of those high-end restaurantes where the lighting was warm, the silverware shone like polished mirrors, and the scent of freshly baked bread drifted gently from the kitchen. But to the staff, there was one dark cloud that hung over the dining room every time he appeared, Viktor Kralov. Viktor wasn't just rich, he was the king of rich that tugged the world await him with his best smile and perfect service at all times. His sights were tailored in Milan, his watch was worth more than most people's yearly salary, and his arrogance could be felt from across the room. He had a reputation among the staff. No witnesses lasted more than a week when he was around. One wrong move, one teeny delay, and he'd humiliate you in front of the whole room, then demand the manager fire you on the spot. It was a Tuesday evening when the door swung open, and the soft chime above it rang. In stepped Maya. She was new, only her second day on the job, but already her presence drew attention. She wasn't dressed to impress anyone, just in the crisp black and white uniform the restaurant required. Her dark hair was neatly pulled back into a bun, and to her face was calm, there was a strength in her eyes. Most noticeable of all was the gentle curve of her belly. She was at least 6 months pregnant, but she walked with a quiet confidence. At the hostess stand, the manager looked uncomfortable. Maya, he began in a low voice, Victor's hair turned. He didn't need to explain further, everyone on staff knew what that meant. Maya tilted her head slightly. The difficult one, the one who makes people cry, the manager corrected grimly. Listen, we can switch your section. I don't want. I'll take him, she said firmly, without hesitation. The manager stared at her like she'd just volunteered to walk into a lion's cage. You sir, if handled worse than rude customers, replied simply. A few minutes later, approached Victor's table. He didn't look up, his eyes were fixed on his phone, his thumb scrolling lazily. Without glancing at her, he said, "You're late." His voice carried that sharp edge, cold, dismissive, expecting her to shrink away. But Maya didn't flinch. She placed a crystal glass of water down in front of him with steady hands. Here is some water, will you decide on your order, said, her voice even, unshaken. Only then did he look up. For the first time, his gaze met hers. He was used to waitresses looking nervous, apologizing for things that weren't their fault, but she just stood there, calm as still water. There was no fear in her eyes, only quiet determination. And he didn't know it yet, this was the first moment something in him began to shift. The evening service was in full swing now, the clinking of cutlery and the low hum of conversation filling the golden flame. Viktor Kralov sat back in his chair like a king surveying his court, his phone still in one hand, and a faint smirk tugging at his lips as he prepared to test the new waitresses. Bring him your best steak, he said without looking at the menu. Medium rare, and make sure it is actually medium rare. The last girl couldn't tell the difference between rare and solitaire. His tone dripped with condescension, as if every word was a test he was destined to fail. Maya wrote nothing down, noted, she replied simply, and turned to leave. Victor raised an eyebrow. You're not going to write it. I don't need to, said over her shoulder, already heading toward the kitchen. The corner of his mouth twitched. He wasn't sure if he was either confident or just foolish. 15 minutes later, Maya returned, balancing the plate with practiced grace. She placed it in front of him without the slightest tremor in her hands. The stick, glistened under the warm light, a perfect sear on the outside. She set down the knife and fork with care, then stepped back, letting him take the first bit without hovering. Victor cut into it, half expecting to find it overcooked. Instead, the knife slid through the tender meat like butter, revealing a perfect pink center. He looked up at her, but she was busy calmly refilling a nearby table's wine glasses, not watching him for approval like others did. A small flicker of curiosity crossed his mind. That wasn't the usual nervous difference he got, this woman was different. But Victor wasn't about to let her off so easily. When SH returned, he leaned back in his chair, his voice laced with deliberate provocation. You've done well so far. But let us see if you can handle something trickier. He rattled off an unnecessarily complicated dessert order, one that required the kitchen to custom prepare 3 separate components and have them all served warm. Most waitresses would groan or hesitate, knowing the chef's hated last-minute demands like that. Maya simply said, coming right up, and walked away. When SH returned 20 minutes later, not only was the dessert perfect, but she added a fresh mint garnish and a drizzle of caramel that the kitchen didn't usually serve. Thought you might like an extra touch, SH said evenly. For the first time in years, Victor found himself at a loss for words. This woman, pregnant, on her feet all night, carrying a child and a full tray, wasn't just doing her job, SH was owning it. And he didn't admit it aloud. A strained respect was starting to form. Something told him this waitress wasn't going to quit, and maybe, just maybe, SH was here to teach him a lesson he didn't know he needed. The night was winding down, and the last few customers had trickled out of the golden flame. The soft hum of the dishwasher in the back mixed with the faint aroma of coffee and roasted meat still hanging in the air. Victor sat alone at his usual table, swirling the last sip of his whiskey in the glass. He had been coming here for years, yet tonight felt different. Maya emerged from the kitchen, her apron slightly stained from the evening's rush, a gentle hand resting absent-mindedly on her belly. Her steps were slower now, but steady. SH approached his table with the same calm confidence she'd shown all night. You're still here, SH said, sticking empty glasses from nearby tables. I am, Victor replied, studying her. Usually, by now, the waitress has either quit or burst into tears. Maya smirked. Well, I'm not most waitresses. SH leaned in slightly. And I don't let someone else's bad manners dictate how my day is going to go. That comment hit him harder than he expected. He was used to being the one in control, the one who made others bend to his mood. But this woman, pregnant, tired, and probably making just enough to get by, stood her ground without hostility, without fear. Victor cleared his throat, suddenly feeling a rare twinge of discomfort. Why do you even bother putting up with someone like him? Maya looked him dead in the eye. Because I have bigger battles to fight. This job, it pays for the crib my baby will sleep in. The food will put on our table. You're just noise. And if learned to tune out noise. There was no malice in her voice, just a simple, unshakable trust. For the first time in years, Victor found himself humbled. He realized all his little, tedious, and condescending games didn't matter to someone who carried real purpose. He sat back, slowly nodding. You know, you might be the first person who ever said that to him. Then maybe you've been hanging around the wrong people, SH replied softly, getting the last of the dishes. As SH walked away toward the kitchen, Victor watched her go, a rare smile tugging at his lips. It wasn't the smoke green he usually wore, it was something warmer, more genuine. That night, for the first time in a long time, he left the restaurant without criticizing a single thing. And he would never admit it to anyone. He knew he'd be back, not to test her, but to hear what SH might teach him next. Because somewhere between the orders and the quiet defiance, a pregnant waitress had managed to do what no one else could, remained a root millionaire what respect looked like. Defies. If you want, I can now give you image prompts for each scene so this story can be perfectly visualized. That will make it ready for a short film or illustrated story.